Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back into a world that feels at once fascinating and brutal. A medieval village where life is lived close to the earth, and every day is a dance with survival. Imagine this. You wake up not to the sound of an alarm clock, but to the toll of church bells echoing across frosty fields, calling both your body and spirit to work. The first smell greeting your nose isn't coffee or toast, but a heavy blend of wood smoke, damp earth, and that faint, unmistakable tang of livestock that reminds you how close life and labor sit here. This village isn't just a scattering of houses on a map. It's a living, breathing organism. And you're about to walk through it, feeling every chill breeze, every sidelong glance, and yes, every clump of mud sticking to your boots like it's daring you to survive another day. Honestly, you probably won't survive this winter without the collective grit of the entire community. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to hear where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Drop it in the comments so we can see just how far these bedtime journeys stretch. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into the heart of the village, and the first thing that hits you is how compact and close-knit everything feels. The cottages huddle together like old friends, their thatched roofs heavy with frost, their wooden doors scarred from decades of weather. Smoke rises lazily from crooked chimneys, twisting and blending with the pale morning sky. The main street is no more than a muddy path, its surface frozen unevenly after last night's chill, and you have to pick your way carefully to avoid slipping. Chickens scatter in front of you, flapping their wings indignantly, while a skinny brown dog watches from a doorway, tail wagging half-heartedly, as if deciding whether you're friend or foe. The smells are strong and layered, earth and manure, sure, but also bread baking in the communal oven, a warm, yeasty aroma that makes you forget the cold for a second. There's a faint whiff of fresh-cut wood drifting from the carpenter's corner, mingling with the metallic tang of iron being shaped in the blacksmith's forge. Life here doesn't separate cleanly into pleasant or unpleasant scents. Everything blends into one rich, earthy perfume that tells you exactly what matters: food, warmth, and work. People are already moving about, each with a purpose. A woman with a basket of eggs strides toward the market square, her skirt muddy at the hem, but her posture straight and unyielding. The blacksmith, a man with arms like tree trunks, is hammering away at a glowing rod of iron, the sparks leaping like fireflies around his feet. Every strike of his hammer rings out across the village, a rhythm that feels almost like the pulse of this place. Meanwhile, a young boy chases after a runaway goose, his shouts echoing off the walls as the bird honks in defiance. The sight draws a few chuckles from passers-by because, in a world as demanding as this one, moments of lightheartedness are precious. Historians still argue about whether medieval villages were idyllic communities of mutual support or tense hubs of quiet rivalries. Watching these people interact, you sense a little of both. Neighbors share tools and labor, but there's always that flicker of competition. Who has the healthier cow? Whose field yields more grain? Whose bread tastes better? Survival doesn't just depend on cooperation. It depends on not falling behind Near the central well, you pause to watch two women draw water. Their movements are quick but graceful, muscles honed by years of repetition. As they haul the heavy buckets, they gossip in low, conspiratorial voices. One mentions the miller's missing grain, while the other teases about who might be courting the carpenter's eldest son. Their laughter breaks through the chilly air like sunlight on a cold morning. A playful shove almost sends one of them slipping, but she regains her footing and grins. It's moments like these, mundane yet warm, that reveal how life here thrives, not just on work, but on connection. The sounds of the village grow louder as the day unfolds. You hear the creak of wagon wheels, the soft lowing of cattle, the rhythmic thud of a woman pounding grain in a mortar. Somewhere in the distance, a shepherd whistles for his dog, the sharp note cutting through the cold air. And then there's the murmur of voices, the lifeblood of this place, carrying news, jokes, worries, and hopes. A quirky moment catches your attention. A child, no more than 4, is dragging a stick through the mud, tracing patterns as if she's writing secret messages to the earth. Her mother calls her back, but the little girl lingers, determined to finish her art. Even in a village built on labor and survival, imagination endures. Historians may argue about medieval peasants' misery, but here the truth is clear. Life is harsh, winters are brutal, work is endless, and hunger lingers. But there is laughter by the well, pride in fresh bread, and a quiet peace in daily rhythms. As the sun climbs, the village stirs. The baker appears with armfuls of warm loaves. Farmers lead their oxen with steady voices, and you feel drawn into this current of life, as though the village itself whispers, "Welcome. Now you work too." The day stretches ahead with endless tasks, fetching water, chopping wood, tending animals. Yet a strange satisfaction lingers. No one expects luxury, only to work, share, and endure. And as you breathe in the earthy air, you begin to see this is more than survival. It's a quiet, stubborn way of being alive. You start your morning with a gaze toward the hill, and there it is, the manor. It isn't just a building, it's a statement. Rising above the cottages, its shadow stretches like an unspoken rule across every path and field. The manor is the center of both protection and power, a place where your destiny is shaped, whether you're invited inside or not. You catch yourself squinting at its timber beams or stone walls, wondering what life might look like from those windows. Spoiler, it involves better food, fewer blisters, and an absurd amount of tapestries you'll never be allowed to touch. The lord of this manor lives like a hawk perched above the village, part benevolent guardian, part ruthless overseer. His reputation is whispered about in the green, half hero, half villain. Some villagers insist he protects them from bandits, wolves, and the chaos beyond the hedgerows. Others mutter that his taxes are as relentless as winter frost, draining every ounce of surplus, grain or coin. Historians still argue whether the feudal lord was more of a stabilizing influence or an oppressive figurehead. But for you, waking up to his steward's demands for labor or rent, the debate feels painfully one-sided. As you trudge closer, you notice the manor's details. Its heavy oak door is banded with iron, and the courtyard smells faintly of straw and roasting meat. A scent you won't find in a peasant's home unless someone is getting married Or more realistically, unless it's feast day and you're extremely lucky. Guards or retainers mill about, dressed in leather and chainmail. Their presence a silent reminder that this place operates on its own rules. Step out of line, and the manor's justice can be swifter than you'd like. Inside, life feels like a different planet. The grand hall is designed to impress, with its long tables, blazing hearth, and banners stitched with the family's crest. Feasts here are a mixture of local pride and social performance. You imagine the lord at the high table, sipping spiced wine from a goblet, while everyone else sits on rough benches lower down, trying to sneak an extra slice of bread. The divide is clear. Status is on display with every bite and every glance. The manor isn't just a home, it's also the village's administrative and legal center. Disputes over fields, theft, or family squabbles often end up here, with the lord or his bailiff acting as judge. There's a kind of drama to it. Neighbors accusing each other, fines being handed out, and sometimes public punishments that everyone remembers for years. Think of it as the medieval version of reality TV, only with fewer confessionals and more mud. A quirky tidbit? Manors sometimes had private chapels, and the lord's family would sit through mass in far more comfort than the peasants down in the village church. The pews might be cushioned, and the air filled with the smell of imported incense instead of damp straw. It's a reminder that even in spirituality, status had a front row seat. As you wander back down toward the village, the contrast hits you. Outside the manor walls, life is simple, noisy, and raw. Children splash in puddles, women haul buckets of water, and men return from the fields with mud clinging to their boots like a second skin. Yet the manor's influence stretches everywhere. The grain in the mill? A portion of it is owed to the lord. The blacksmith's iron tools? He pays in both labor and loyalty. Even the festivals on the green, full of music and dancing, are indirectly funded by the very system that keeps everyone in line. You can't help but think about the invisible threads tying you to this place. Your labor in the fields buys not just your survival, but also the feasts and luxuries up on the hill. Still, there's a grudging respect in the air. The manor may be heavy-handed, but without it, who keeps out the raiders? Who resolves disputes when tempers flare over the boundary of a cabbage patch? It's a delicate dance of protection and exploitation, and you're one of the many players. As dusk approaches, you glance back at the manor one last time. Its windows glow with the warmth of firelight, while smoke curls from the chimneys. The sight is oddly comforting and infuriating at once. You know the Lord is likely dining on roast venison while you're left with your humble broth. But there's also the feeling that, at least for tonight, the village sleeps under a watchful eye. Whether that eye is kind or calculating is another question entirely. And maybe you're better off not knowing. You wake to the sound of bells, each chime rolling across the fields like a living voice announcing that the day belongs not to you, but to the rhythm of the village. The church calls everyone, every single soul, from the smallest child to the eldest elder. And it doesn't ask politely. This is the heart of your world, the pivot around which time itself seems to spin. In this village, the church is not just a building. It is the compass, the clock, the courthouse, and the voice that whispers about life after death when the fields turn silent. You trudge toward it as the dawn stretches across the horizon, a faint mist clinging to the ground. The air is cool, smelling faintly of wet earth and smoke from hearth fires still smoldering inside the cottages. The church rises ahead, modest in size but unshakable in presence. Its stone walls are streaked with moss, and a wooden door, scarred by decades of weather, creaks slightly in the breeze. Its steeple pierces the sky like a finger pointing to a reality beyond your daily struggles with mud, livestock, and taxes. It's both reassuring and intimidating, like the gaze of someone who knows all your secrets. Inside, the church is dim and hushed. Candles flicker like tiny stars, throwing light over the rough stone altar and the carved figures of saints who seem to watch you with equal parts patience and judgment. The smell is a mixture of melted wax, old wood, and the faint mustiness of centuries of damp weather pressing into the stone. Here, faith is not just preached, it's physically embedded into every surface, every worn pew, every scratch made by generations of elbows, leaning during endless sermons. You find a place on a wooden bench, its surface polished by countless backsides over the years. The priest stands at the front, draped in faded vestments that once were bright. His voice carries in Latin, a language you don't understand fully, but the tone is clear enough, commanding yet soothing, like someone reciting poetry, while also reminding you to pay your taxes on time. Historians still argue whether the church's real power was spiritual or political. But sitting here, you know it's both. The priest is the only man in this entire village who can read, who keeps records of births, deaths, and marriages. He's not just a religious figure, he's the community's historian, its moral compass, and in some ways, its quiet judge. The bells are more than sounds. They are the heartbeat of your existence. One set of chimes tells you it's time for morning prayer. Another signals that work in the fields should begin. When the great bell rings in the evening, you know the day is done, and the village exhales into a quiet murmur of fires being stoked and bread being shared. If a bell rings at an unexpected hour, you tense instantly. It means death, fire, or danger, and everyone stops what they're doing to listen. The churchyard outside is equally important. Here, under the spreading branches of an ancient yew tree, lie the graves of villagers who lived and died before you. The wooden crosses tilt slightly, the names on them fading, but the stories remain alive in whispered tales told by elders. It's sobering to realize that your name will one day join them, your life compressed into a simple carving. And yet somehow, that thought makes you cherish the warmth of the morning sun a little more. Feast days are when the church truly shines. Easter, Christmas, and Saints' Days turn this quiet stone building into a stage of color, music, and sense. You can almost hear the choir's voices lifting toward the rafters, their notes mixing with the smell of incense and fresh pine boughs hung along the walls. On these days, even the poorest peasants have reason to smile, because there might be bread baked with honey, maybe a small piece of pork roasted on a spit, and a mug of ale passed around with more generosity than usual. The church becomes the place where hardship pauses, where you can laugh without guilt and sing without fear of being overheard by the reeve. Speaking of ale, there's a quirky tradition called church ales. It's basically a sanctioned community drinking session to raise money for repairs or special causes. Picture it. A long table set outside, pitchers of weak beer lined up, villagers chatting and laughing, all under the watchful eye of the priest, who probably pretends not to notice that the merriment is less about holy charity and more about getting a little tipsy. But it works. People give, drink, and leave happy, and the church roof gets fixed for another year. Of course, the church isn't all light and warmth. It has rules, harsh ones. If you gossip too much, fail to pay your tithe, or commit a sin that's impossible to hide, you might face public penance. Imagine standing in front of your entire village, your head bowed, while the priest announces you're failing. It's the medieval version of being blasted on social media. Except here, the embarrassment lingers for weeks because everyone sees you every single day. Yet there is comfort here too. The church provides a sense of belonging, of shared belief. It tells you that your toil, your hunger, your struggles with blisters and aching muscles are not meaningless. There is a bigger story, a divine plan, even if you don't quite understand it. For many villagers, that's enough to keep going, to plant another row of barley, to light another candle for a loved one. As you leave the church, the sun is higher in the sky now, glinting off the dewy grass. People spill out of the doors, chatting quietly, exchanging nods and gossip. Children run ahead, their laughter breaking the solemnity of the moment. And you feel it, that connection between the sacred and the ordinary, between the ringing of bells and the scraping of hoes in the field. It's all part of the same rhythm, and you're moving to it whether you realize it or not. Standing in the churchyard, you take one last look at the steeple. It cuts the sky like an arrow, pointing to heaven, but also anchoring the entire village to this small patch of earth. Faith, after all, is not just about the afterlife. It's about surviving this one. And in this village, the church makes sure you remember that every single day. You step out of the churchyard, and the seasons themselves seem to greet you. Life here is measured not by clocks or calendars, but by the shifting moods of the earth. Spring, summer, autumn, winter. Each season arrives like an uninvited guest that everyone must make room for. You trudge down the muddy path, knowing that every step you take is shaped by what the sky is doing, what the soil is whispering, and what your neighbors are muttering about the weather. Spring is a rush of urgency and hope. You can almost smell renewal in the air, a mix of damp soil, new grass, and the faint sweetness of blossoms from the hedgerows. You see villagers scattering seeds across plowed fields, their hands quick but careful. There's a superstition that if you whisper a prayer to Saint Isidore, patron saint of farmers, while planting your first row, you'll have a better harvest. No one knows if this is true, but no one dares skip it either. Historians still argue whether these rituals were born out of faith or just clever ways to keep morale high during endless hours of work. But for you, bent over a furrow with the sun barely up, the answer doesn't matter. It's survival. By summer, the village hums with relentless energy. The days stretch long and hot, the sun beating down until your shirt sticks to your back and sweat runs into your eyes. Haymaking is in full swing. You join the others in cutting tall grasses, turning them into golden piles that will feed animals through winter. The fields buzz with activity, men scything, women gathering and stacking, children shooing birds away from the ripening grain. It's all hands on deck, because one storm could flatten a field and ruin weeks of work. And yes, the jokes fly fast. Someone always teases the youngest workers by saying they missed a patch of grass bigger than the priest's nose, which somehow gets funnier each time you hear it. Autumn is both beautiful and exhausting. You can see the fields glowing gold and rust under a slanted sun, but the race is on. Grain, barley, and oats need to be harvested, threshed, and stored before the weather turns. You spend your days bent over, cutting and bundling, your back aching and fingers raw. By evening, the air smells of straw, earth, and the sweet tang of apples being pressed for cider. If the harvest is good, the whole village celebrates with a feast. Roast meat, if you're lucky, and bread so fresh it almost steams when you break it open. A barrel of ale is rolled out, and music spills into the night. Even the Lord's steward might join in for a dance or two, pretending he's just one of the villagers for once. But winter is the great equalizer. When the first frost creeps over the fields, you can feel the mood of the village shift. Work doesn't stop, but it changes. You're no longer out plowing. Instead, you're tending animals in the barn, repairing tools by the fire, and praying you've stored enough food to make it to spring. The air inside cottages is thick with the smell of wood smoke, cabbage stew, and sometimes a whiff of damp wool drying near the hearth. It's cozy in its own way, but also claustrophobic. The nights are long, the days short, and the darkness presses against the windows like an unwelcome guest. When boredom sets in, you find yourself telling old stories or listening to the village storyteller recount tales of saints, dragons, or the time someone tried to use goat fat as a miracle cure. Spoiler alert, it didn't end well. A quirky fact? People believed certain tasks had to be done in specific seasons or risk angering supernatural forces. Planting beans on a Friday was considered bad luck, while weaving cloth during a waning moon was thought to bring misfortune. It's hard to say whether these ideas had any real impact, but they gave a sense of order in a world where weather and fate were unpredictable. You can't control the rain, but you can choose not to tempt the spirits by doing laundry on the wrong day. And honestly, who wants to mess with angry spirits when winter's already breathing down your neck? Historians still debate whether medieval peasants saw time as cyclical or linear. But walking through the seasons, you feel the cycle in your bones. Spring is birth, summer is youth, autumn is maturity, and winter is old age. And then, just when you think you can't take another week of dark mornings and frozen mud, the first buds of spring poke through, and the whole cycle starts again. It's exhausting and comforting all at once. There's a strange peace in this rhythm. You know what to expect, even if it's hard. You know when to prepare, when to celebrate, and when to hunker down. You can almost hear the village itself breathing with the seasons, each inhale and exhale marked by planting, harvesting, feasting, or waiting. And as you watch smoke rise from chimneys against a winter sky, you realize that life here isn't about conquering nature. It's about moving in step with it, like a dance that's been going on for centuries. You head back along the muddy track toward your cottage, the smell of roasting turnips wafting in the air, and you can't help but feel connected, not just to your neighbors, but to the countless generations who have lived this same cycle before you. This is not just survival, it's tradition, memory, and the slow pulse of history itself. You make your way to the village green, and it's clear why this patch of common land is the soul of the settlement. The green is where the entire tapestry of village life comes together. Market stalls, gossip sessions, games, festivals, disputes, and even the occasional brawl over a stolen goose. It's the place where boundaries blur, where lords and peasants might stand closer than the social order usually allows, if only for a fleeting moment. Walking onto the green, you can feel its energy, like stepping onto a stage where everyone has a role to play. In the morning, the green is bustling with traders and villagers. You see rough wooden stalls set up with goods, clay pots, bundles of herbs, baskets of onions, and the odd luxury item like a scrap of dyed cloth that someone swears came from France. Though, let's be honest, it probably didn't. A peddler hawks tin spoons, shouting above the chatter, while a woman in a faded blue dress haggles fiercely over the price of salt. You can hear the rhythmic sounds of bartering, offers, counteroffers, and the occasional exasperated sigh. It's not just business, it's entertainment. Watching your neighbor argue over a single copper coin is better than most medieval plays. The children turn the green into their playground. They chase each other through the grass, their laughter mingling with the bleating of sheep grazing nearby. A group of boys kicks a leather ball stitched with rough cord, playing a chaotic game that has no rules other than don't lose the ball in the stream. One girl balances on a fallen log like it's a royal stage, pretending to be a queen, while the others cheer her on. It's not all fun, of course. When the reeve walks by, the kids scatter like startled birds, knowing he won't hesitate to assign them some small chore if they look too idle. The green is also the heart of the village rumor mill. You can't take 3 steps without hearing something whispered about someone's love life, someone else's brewing scandal, or the mysterious disappearance of a neighbor's chicken. Gossip here is more than idle chatter. It's a form of social control, shaping reputations and keeping everyone in check. There's always that one sharp-tongued older woman who seems to know every secret, and you can bet she'll casually mention that your firewood stack looks a little thin for the coming winter. Half warning, half judgment. Historians still argue whether the village green was more of a market space or a social hub, but the truth is, it's both. On market days, you see traders from other villages, sometimes even travelers from faraway towns. They bring exotic goods, honey from distant hives, bright-colored beads, or spices that smell strange and wonderful. You can't help but wonder how far these goods have traveled, and for a moment, you feel connected to a world far beyond your village hedges. Of course, you don't have the coins to buy most of it, but looking is free, and that's half the fun. Festivals transform the green into something magical. May Day, for example, is a riot of color and laughter. Ribbons twine around the maypole as people dance in patterns that feel as old as the hills. A fiddler plays a lively tune while others clap in time. Women bring out pies, loaves of fresh bread, and pots of ale, and the air smells of roasted meat and sweet honey cakes. For one day, you forget the mud on your boots and the aching in your back. For one day, everyone is just part of the same celebration, and even the stern reeve cracks a smile. A quirky detail? The green often doubles as an informal courthouse. If there's a dispute, say, someone accuses their neighbor of stealing apples, people gather here to watch it unfold. The Lord Steward might step in, or sometimes the entire village weighs in with opinions. It's like a live medieval reality show, only with fewer confessions and a lot more shouting. And if you're lucky, the case ends with everyone sharing a drink, because nothing heals old wounds quite like a mug of ale. As the sun dips lower, the green shifts mood. The market stalls pack up, children are called home, and the day's gossip turns into quiet conversations. You sit on the edge of the green, watching the sky fade from gold to pink to a deep, velvety blue. The smell of smoke drifts from nearby cottages, mixing with the earthy scent of trampled grass. For a moment, there's peace. This green, this tiny communal patch, is a microcosm of life itself, full of joy, tension, laughter, and memory. You realize that if the manor is the village's head and the church its heart, then the green is its voice, the place where everyone's stories are told, argued over, and remembered. And as you rise to head home, you notice something curious. A group of villagers gathering sticks and setting up a large fire pit. A festival is coming. Maybe a feast day. Maybe just an excuse to dance under the stars. Either way, you know you'll be back here, standing shoulder to shoulder with everyone else. As flames crackle, ale flows, and the simple miracle of community lights up the night. You return to the heart of the village, just as the sun breaks through the morning mist, and the first thing that greets you is the rhythmic clanging of the blacksmith's hammer. The forge stands near the edge of the green, glowing like a small volcano, its heat spilling into the cool air. Beside it, you can hear the gentle hum of the millstones grinding grain, and further down, the smell of warm bread drifts from the bakehouse. These three places, the mill, the forge, and the bakehouse, are the lifeblood of the village. Without them, daily survival would be impossible. The mill is your first stop. You follow the sound of rushing water, and there it is. A wooden water wheel turning with steady purpose, its creaking timbers telling you this structure has stood here for generations. The miller greets you with a nod, but doesn't stop working. His job is constant, grinding the grain that feeds every household in the village. The air inside the mill is thick with fine white dust, coating your hair and clothes with the scent of flour. A sneeze escapes before you can help it. You can't blame anyone for being suspicious of the miller. He has a unique power. Everyone needs him, yet everyone wonders if they're really getting the fair share of flour. Historians still argue about whether millers were unfairly maligned or genuinely tricky with their measurements. But either way, you keep a close eye on your sack of grain. Next, you wander toward the forge. If the mill smells like flour and sweat, the forge smells like fire and metal. The blacksmith is there, sleeves rolled up, arms glistening with sweat as he pounds a glowing piece of iron into shape. Sparks fly like tiny stars around him, and you step back slightly, wary of being burned. There's something almost mystical about this place. The villagers joke that the blacksmith has fire in his blood, but there's a grain of truth to it. Watching him transform raw iron into tools, nails, horseshoes, or even weapons feels like watching magic. One quirky detail: people in some villages believed blacksmiths could ward off evil spirits because of their ability to control fire and metal. You don't know if it's true, but you're not about to doubt the man wielding a hammer the size of your forearm. The forge is also a social hub in its own way. People stop by to chat with the blacksmith, to trade news while waiting for a broken scythe to be repaired or a cooking pot to be patched. You hear snippets of gossip about who's getting married, whose cow has gone missing, and which field produced a bumper crop of oats. It's as if the blacksmith's anvil not only shapes metal, but also shapes the conversations that ripple through the village. Then, there's the bakehouse. You step inside, and the warmth wraps around you like a hug. The smell is heavenly, a mix of yeast, smoke, and fresh loaves baking in the communal oven. Women bustle around, placing dough into the heat and pulling out golden brown loaves that steam in the cool air. Bread is more than food here. It's life. A single loaf represents hours of planting, harvesting, grinding, kneading, and baking. You watch as villagers exchange quiet jokes and bits of news while they work, their laughter mingling with the crackle of the fire. This place feels less like a workshop and more like a sanctuary of shared sustenance. Historians still debate whether bakehouses were primarily communal or privately run in villages. But the truth is that here, they serve as both bakery and gathering place. Everyone needs bread, and everyone comes here eventually. There's even a rumor that the baker adds a pinch of ground rosemary to his loaves for good luck. No one's sure if it helps, but no one complains. Together, the mill, the forge, and the bakehouse form a triangle of survival. Grain becomes flour at the mill. The blacksmith provides the tools to farm that grain. The bakehouse turns flour into the bread that fills your belly. It's a chain of creation, each link dependent on the other. If one fails, a broken millstone, a missing blacksmith, or a cold oven, the whole village feels it. You can almost hear this rhythm as you move through the day. The grind of the millstones, the ring of the hammer, the hiss of bread crust cracking as it cools. There's something oddly comforting in this cycle. Sure, it's hard work. Back-breaking, repetitive, and sometimes downright boring. But it's also reliable. You know what to expect. You know that the miller will still be here tomorrow, brushing flour off his sleeves. The blacksmith will still be hammering sparks into the air, and the baker will still be pulling loaves from the oven before the sun is fully up. This constancy is what keeps the village alive. By the time you step back onto the green, the sun is high, and the smells of bread and fire mix in the breeze. You take a moment to look around at the busy scene, villagers moving between these three vital spaces like ants in a hive, each person playing a part. It's not glamorous, but it's the heartbeat of life here, steady and unyielding. You can't help but smile as you remember something an old man once told you. In a village, you'll know the truth about life by listening to three sounds: the turning of the mill, the ringing of the anvil, and the crackle of bread in the oven. When those sounds stop, life stops. Looking around now, you believe him. You wake early the next morning to the faint sound of a rooster, and before long, you notice the subtle choreography of village life unfolding around you. This place doesn't survive by accident. Every single role, from the reeve to the shepherd, is a cog in the wheel that keeps everything turning. You might think a village is just a handful of farmers scraping by, but spend one day here and you'll realize it's a carefully balanced ecosystem where everyone knows their part. Miss a beat, and the entire rhythm stumbles. The reeve is the first figure you encounter. He's not quite a lord, but not just another villager either. His job is to act as the bridge between the manor and the people. And honestly, it's a thankless gig. You see him walking the fields with a ledger tucked under his arm, checking that the work is being done, that taxes are being collected, and that no one is trying to sneak an extra sack of grain past the miller. Historians still argue whether the reeve was respected or despised, but from the look of the villagers muttering under their breath as he passes, you can take a pretty good guess. Even so, when disputes arise, over field boundaries, grazing rights, or whose pig ate whose turnips, he's the one everyone grudgingly listens to. Then there's the herdsman. You spot him at the far edge of the green, staff in hand, calling to a dozen sheep with names that sound like a mix of ancient saints and odd pet nicknames. His job is solitary, but vital. Without him, livestock would scatter into the woods, or worse, into the jaws of wolves. His clothes are patched and muddy, but his knowledge of the land and its animals is second to none. You watch him guide the sheep with a mix of gentle calls and sharp whistles, the kind of communication only years of practice can forge. You get the feeling he's more comfortable talking to animals than to people. A few steps further, and you find the midwife's cottage, its roof low and its doorway hung with bundles of drying herbs. Inside, the midwife herself is preparing remedies, her hands moving quickly over bowls and jars filled with things you can't quite identify. She's both healer and confidant, someone who knows more about the women of this village than even their husbands do. Birth, illness, fever, she's the one called upon when the church's prayers feel a bit too vague and the local doctor is miles away. A quirky tidbit? Many believed midwives carried charms to protect newborns from evil spirits. Whether it's superstition or just good marketing, no one questions her skill. You can't ignore the blacksmith either, the man who turns raw metal into tools that keep the fields and homes functioning. We've met him before at the forge, but his role is so essential, it bears repeating. He sharpens plows, repairs hinges, and even crafts the nails that hold the manor's beams together. He's part craftsman, part problem solver, part local legend. If a plow breaks right before harvest, he's the one who saves the day. And you can bet he earns a mug of ale and a few stories told in his honor. As you continue wandering, you notice how children are woven into this network of labor. They chase birds from freshly seeded fields, haul buckets of water, and gather firewood. It's their version of school, learning by doing. And while they complain like kids do, you can see the pride in their eyes when they're praised for their efforts. This is how survival skills are passed down, not in classrooms, but in muddy fields and smoky kitchens. Historians still debate whether medieval villages were truly cooperative or simply endured a hierarchy out of necessity. But walking among these people, you can see it's both. Each role carries weight, and everyone knows that if one job fails, everyone pays the price. If the herdsman loses a cow, the village eats less. If the midwife falls ill, mothers and babies suffer. If the reeve fails to collect what the Lord demands, well, no one wants to imagine the consequences. There's humor here too. You catch a few jokes flying around as the villagers work side by side. Someone teases the reeve about his fancy shoes, being caked in more mud than anyone else's. The blacksmith laughs about a chicken wandering into his forge, calling it the bravest night he's ever seen. These moments of levity are as important as the work itself. Without laughter, life here would feel unbearably heavy. In the evening, as the sun sets and the day's tasks slow, you see the entire village gather around small fires or along the green. The reeve stands chatting with the baker. The herdsman leans on his staff, and the midwife sits nearby, sipping something warm from a clay cup. It's a quiet reminder that this isn't just a workplace. It's a community stitched together by necessity and trust. Every person here, from the smallest child to the most wrinkled elder, has a thread in the tapestry. As night falls, you realize something profound. These roles, while humble, carry the weight of survival. They don't just keep the village running. They keep its spirit alive. You feel it in the warmth of shared stories, in the echo of laughter over the crackle of fire, and in the tired but satisfied nods of people who know they've done their part for another day. Here, you're not just a bystander. You're part of the wheel now, turning with them, bound by the same rhythm. You wake to a sound that is equal parts laughter and chaos. Children darting through the village lanes, their feet slapping on packed earth, voices carrying over the fields like tiny bells. Childhood here isn't about idle days or toys scattered across a bedroom floor. No, childhood is duty wrapped in moments of play, a weaving of chores and mischief that defines every hour from sunrise to sunset. You watch as the younger ones chase chickens out of the green, only to be yelled at by a woman trying to collect eggs. One boy sticks his tongue out at her, then dashes away giggling. Because even in a life dominated by work, children still find their joy. Life here doesn't let children stay children for long. At 5 or 6, they're already hauling water, feeding goats, and picking stones from fields. Their school is the rhythm of village life, the way to handle an ox, the proper method of stacking firewood, and the endless cycle of sowing and harvesting. They learn by watching, by copying, by being scolded when they don't get it right. And you, standing there, realize that this is how the village's memory lives on, in small, grubby hands that grow skilled long before their owners even know what childhood means. The games they play are simple, but they're more than distractions. A group of boys is rolling hoops made of bent willow branches, shouting as they race down the path. 2 girls, their hair tied with scraps of ribbon, are skipping over a rope fashioned from the braided straw. Their laughter is infectious, even as the older villagers pretend to be annoyed. A funny detail? Sometimes children here play catch the goose, which involves exactly what it sounds like, running after a goose that has zero interest in being caught. More than once, a terrified goose has ended up in the forge or the bakehouse, causing mayhem while the blacksmith swears and the baker throws flour-covered hands in the air. Historians still argue whether medieval children had any real free time. But watching this scene, you can see they carve out fun wherever they can. Even their chores double as games. Chasing birds away from a field? Turn it into a competition to see who can scare off the most crows. Gathering sticks for firewood? Whoever collects the biggest bundle wins bragging rights, and maybe an extra slice of bread. In the evening, when the fields are quiet and the animals have been fed, you'll find children gathered near the green, listening wide-eyed as older villagers tell stories. This is their version of bedtime tales, only the stories here are less about happily ever afters and more about cautionary lessons. Don't wander into the woods, or the spirits will get you. Never whistle after dark, or you'll summon a ghost. Whether these stories are true or just a way to keep kids in line, they're told with such conviction that even you feel a chill listening to them. The midwife sometimes joins these storytelling sessions, adding her own tales about herbs that heal and charms that protect. A child on her lap, she'll describe how a sprig of rowan tree can ward off misfortune, or how a ribbon tied in a certain way might ensure a safe birth. The children stare at her as if she's part healer, part magician. And maybe she is. A quirky sight catches your eye. A boy carrying a wooden sword, carved crudely but proudly, pretending to be a knight. He runs in circles, shouting imaginary battle cries, while a younger girl pretends to be the dragon, roaring in mock terror. The adults smile but don't interfere. Even their games are a rehearsal for the roles they'll take on later. Play here is a form of preparation. Today's pretend knight will one day wield a plow, or perhaps a real sword if war comes calling. There is also a sense of quiet responsibility in their eyes. At the well, a group of children hauls up water, straining with all their weight, their faces determined. One spills a bit and is met with laughter from the others, but he grins sheepishly, knowing he'll do better next time. These are the moments that forge character, through mud, chores, and the occasional bruised knee. Historians debate how much education medieval children truly received. But in this village, education is everywhere. It's in the way the blacksmith shows a boy how to hold a hammer, in the way a mother teaches her daughter to knead bread without tearing the dough, in the way an older sibling corrects the younger's grip on a hoe. Knowledge here is practical, immediate, and passed down like an heirloom. As night falls, the children gather near the bonfire at the center of the green. Sparks rise into the sky, and their faces glow with the light of stories, songs, and the promise of warm bread from the bakehouse. You sit nearby, watching them nod sleepily against their parents' sides, and it's hard not to feel the quiet beauty of it all. Their lives may be harder than any modern child's, but there's something deeply grounding about growing up so connected to family, to community, to the very soil underfoot. By the time the fire burns low, you see a boy yawning so wide you think his jaw might crack, while a little girl curls up with a scrap of blanket, soot smudged across her cheek. Tomorrow, they'll wake and start it all again. Chores, games, laughter, learning, and growing into the next generation of villagers who will carry these traditions forward. You wake to the smell of bread baking and the faint tang of smoke drifting from the bakehouse. But your stomach grumbles for more than just bread. Food here is both survival and celebration, a direct reflection of the seasons, the fields, and the animals that roam the village pastures. As you walk past the green, you notice a woman stirring a pot suspended over an open flame, its contents bubbling with a mix of barley, onions, and whatever scraps of vegetables are left from the garden. This is pottage, the staple meal of nearly every household. A humble stew that changes slightly each day, depending on what's available. Cabbage today, turnip tomorrow, and if luck is on your side, maybe a sliver of bacon or smoked fish. Food preparation begins at dawn and often lasts until dusk. You peek into a cottage and see a woman grinding grain with a small hand mill, her arms moving in a steady rhythm. Flour dust lingers in the air like mist, settling on her hair and the wooden table where bread dough waits to be kneaded. Bread is life here, but it's no fluffy white loaf. It's dense, dark, and chewy, often made with a mix of rye and barley. When paired with ale or thin broth, it becomes a meal in itself. And yes, you'll eat bread for breakfast, lunch, and dinner because, frankly, what else is there? Historians still debate how much meat peasants really ate. But in this village, meat is a rare treat. Chickens are kept for their eggs, pigs for breeding and eventual feasts, and cows for milk rather than slaughter. When you do see meat roasting, it's either a festival day or someone in the village has just bartered well with the Lord's steward. On most days, the flavor of meat comes in the form of broth, made from bones or tiny scraps boiled with vegetables and herbs. You can smell it wafting from the bakehouse, and even that faint aroma feels like luxury. Ale is everywhere. Water is risky, brimming with who knows what from nearby ditches or wells that haven't been cleaned since the last feast. Instead, villagers drink weak ale, which is safer and provides just enough calories to keep everyone going. Even the children sip from small mugs, their faces lighting up as if they're part of some grown-up ritual. And you, stepping into the bakehouse, are handed a cup of warm ale, its malty scent blending with the smell of fresh bread. You can almost taste history in every sip. Quirky detail? Some villagers swear by odd recipes and cures that would raise modern eyebrows. You overhear a woman explaining that mixing goose fat with crushed garlic helps cure a cough, while another insists that soaking a piece of bread in ale and hanging it over the doorway will keep evil spirits from souring the dough. Do these work? Historians still argue about which medieval remedies were effective and which were just desperate attempts to explain random luck. But in a world where medicine is scarce, you cling to whatever gives hope. Festivals bring a break from this monotonous diet. On feast days, the smell of roasting meat drifts from the green, mingling with the scent of freshly baked honey cakes and spiced cider. The baker works overtime, churning out loaves filled with dried fruit or brushed with butter. You watch as villagers gather, plates in hand, eagerly waiting for their share. For one day, pottage is replaced by roasted chicken, pies, and the kind of rich foods that make you forget the hard labor waiting for you tomorrow. And the ale? Let's just say, no one goes thirsty during these celebrations. You see a family preparing their midday meal near the edge of the fields. The father stirs a pot, the mother kneads dough, and a child runs over carrying a bunch of wild herbs, proud of their foraging find. Wild garlic, nettles, and sorrel are common additions to meals, adding flavor to otherwise bland dishes. Sometimes, villagers even eat roasted chestnuts or hazelnuts gathered from nearby woods. It's a cuisine born from necessity, but there's a certain pride in making the most of what's available. Food isn't just about survival, it's also social glue. Sharing a loaf of bread or a pot of ale isn't just practical, it's an act of trust and friendship. If a neighbor's crop fails or a hunter returns empty-handed, others step in to share what they have. The idea of eating alone is almost unheard of here. Meals are noisy, communal affairs, filled with laughter the clinking of wooden bowls, and the occasional joke about how someone's bread turned out harder than the blacksmith's anvil. As evening falls, the bakehouse becomes a warm haven. The air is rich with the scent of yeast, and the villagers gather to collect their loaves for the next day. You watch as people chat in line, trading stories about the day's work or the coming weather. A boy sneaks a hot crust, burns his fingers, and laughs as his mother pretends to scold him. There's something deeply comforting about this scene, something that feels timeless and unshakable. By the time you step outside, the stars are visible, and the smell of wood smoke mixes with the lingering sweetness of baked bread. You hold a loaf still warm from the oven, its crust rough against your fingers, and you can't help but feel that this simple, unadorned food is more than just sustenance. It's a reminder that even in the toughest times, there's room for flavor, warmth, and a shared meal to remind you of your place in the larger story of the village. You wake to a murmur rippling through the village green. A small crowd is gathering near the manor's steward, and you realize today is market day. But this isn't just about trade. It's also the day when disputes are aired, judgments are made, and justice, such as it is delivered. Welcome to the manor court, the medieval version of both a town hall and a courtroom, where fairness sometimes takes a back seat to the Lord's interests. You wander closer, blending into the crowd, eager to see how this theater of justice unfolds. The manor court is not a grand building. It's simply held under a timbered awning or inside a large barn, depending on the weather. Today, a makeshift bench has been set up, and the steward, acting on behalf of the Lord, sits with a ledger open on his lap, ready to record fines, disputes, and accusations. Around him, villagers stand or squat in the mud, whispering about the cases that will be heard. There's a buzz in the air, a mix of curiosity and dread, as everyone knows that a day in court could mean anything from a small fine to public humiliation. One man steps forward, accused of letting his pigs wander into the wrong field. The reeve speaks first, laying out the case with a sharp tone, and the steward nods thoughtfully. You can see the tension on the accused man's face. He's worried, not because the crime is serious, but because any fine could mean less bread on the table this week. The verdict comes quickly: a small payment of grain to the offended neighbor, and a warning to keep the pigs fenced. The man sighs with relief, while the crowd murmurs their approval. Justice, at least in this case, feels swift and practical. Historians still argue whether manor courts truly represented the interests of the community or merely enforced the will of the Lord. Watching this scene, you realize it's both. While the steward is here to ensure the Lord's property and rights are protected, there's also an undeniable sense of communal accountability. Everyone watches, listens, and judges in their own way. The court is as much about preserving harmony as it is about punishment. A woman is called next. Her crime? Publicly shouting at her neighbor during church. The crowd chuckles, and you can't help but grin. She defends herself fiercely, claiming her neighbor started the argument by accusing her of stealing onions. The steward, clearly amused, fines them both a single egg as a token penalty and tells them to reconcile before the next Sunday. This is justice as performance, equal parts fairness and spectacle, with the village acting as both jury and audience. A quirky detail? Trial by ordeal still lingers in some places, though here it's rarely used. You overhear an old man mutter about a case years ago where someone accused of theft had to hold a red-hot iron bar to prove innocence. The logic, apparently, is that divine power would prevent burns if the accused was telling the truth. Unsurprisingly, most villagers prefer fines and public apologies over fiery theatrics. Public punishment is a different story. Stocks and pillories stand near the edge of the green, and while they're empty today, you've heard tales of men and women locked there, exposed to the jeers of their neighbors. The idea isn't just to punish, but to shame, to remind everyone that bad behavior leaves a mark on both the individual and the community. Watching the steward jot down notes in his ledger, you can't help but think of modern gossip. This is their version of going viral, except the comments are real and shouted directly in your face. The court also handles practical matters. Disputes over land boundaries, unpaid rents, or shared grazing rights all pass through here. You see two men arguing over where a fence should be placed, their voices rising until the steward silences them with a raised hand. He listens patiently, consults with the reeve, and then declares the boundary based on the village's collective memory. There's no written map, no official survey, just the testimony of elders and the knowledge of where a tree once stood or how a stream once flowed. It's messy, but it works. Historians still debate how impartial these courts truly were, especially when nobles were involved. You suspect they weren't impartial at all. If the lord or his steward decides something, that's the end of the matter. A wealthy tenant can often negotiate a lighter fine, while a poor peasant is left with no choice but to pay or work off the debt. You see it in the subtle glances and quiet sighs of the villagers. Yet despite this inequality, the court remains essential. Without it, disputes would fester, and the delicate balance of life here would crumble. As the cases wrap up, the mood shifts. Villagers linger to gossip about the day's verdicts. Someone jokes about the pig case, another laughs about the onion feud, and soon the tension fades into chatter. The steward closes his ledger, satisfied, and the reeve takes a moment to remind everyone of the Lord's next demands. Grain taxes due by the next full moon, repairs needed on the bridge near the stream. You can almost feel the collective sigh of the villagers, but no one protests. This is life here. Predictable, sometimes unfair, but always moving forward. Walking away from the court, you feel a strange mix of admiration and frustration. Justice here is raw and personal. It's less about laws written on parchment and more about the shared values of a tiny, close-knit world. You realize that the court is not just a place of punishment, but a stage where the community itself is tested, its patience, its cooperation, and its ability to laugh at its own dramas. And in that sense, the manor court is as vital to village life as the mill or the church. You rise with the morning mist, the bells of the church ringing faintly across the fields. You can feel the invisible threads of belief and superstition weaving themselves into every step of daily life. Here, faith is not just a private matter, it is the backbone of the entire village. Every chore, every decision, every harvest is shadowed by a prayer, a blessing, or a whispered charm. You see a woman crossing herself as she scatters grain for her chickens, while another ties a small ribbon of red cloth on the doorframe of her cottage, just in case. And honestly, after seeing how unpredictable life here can be, you find yourself tempted to tie a ribbon too. The church stands as both guardian and judge. Its steeple catches the first light of dawn, rising above the cottages like a constant reminder of eternity. On feast days, the villagers gather with their best tunics and cloaks, faces scrubbed clean, children fidgeting beside their parents. Inside, the priest stands at the altar, his voice carrying in a language you barely understand but somehow feel. His sermons mix scripture with practical advice. Pray for good weather, avoid sinful gossip, pay your tithe. Historians still argue whether these services were more about control than faith, but the people here don't question it. The church offers both comfort and order, and that's enough. Superstition, however, creeps in through every crack. You overhear an older man muttering about a witch's curse after his cow refused to give milk. A young woman carries a pouch of herbs tied to her waist, claiming it will ward off evil spirits and bring luck during childbirth. Even the priest, though he'd never admit it, sometimes nods along when villagers talk about charms or talismans. It's as if faith and folklore live side by side, like siblings who argue but secretly depend on each other. A quirky detail? Some villagers believe that hanging a piece of iron over your doorway can keep fairies from stealing your bread. Whether this is true or just a way to explain mysterious events, no one dares to test it. You watch as children mimic these traditions, tracing crosses in the air before eating or whispering little rhymes to protect their goats. It's not formal teaching. It's absorbed like the smell of smoke in their clothes. At night, when the green quiets, the stories come out. Tales of saints who performed miracles, spirits that roam the woods, or strange lights seen over the hills. Some stories are meant to teach, others simply to entertain. But all are delivered with that mix of fear and wonder that makes you glance over your shoulder when the fire burns low. Historians still debate how much medieval people truly feared the supernatural versus how much they used it as a way to explain the unknown. Here, though, you see it's not an academic question. The line between natural and supernatural is as thin as the morning fog. A bad harvest? Maybe the weather, maybe a curse, a sudden illness, could be bad water, or maybe someone's evil eye at work. The villagers don't waste time separating fact from superstition. They simply do everything they can to keep both God and unseen forces on their side. The church calendar sets the rhythm of the year. Beyond Sundays, there are saints' days, holy feasts, and times of fasting that everyone observes. Easter brings new hope, marked by candles and flowers, while Christmas fills the air with the smell of pine boughs and sweet bread. Each celebration feels like a burst of light in the otherwise hard, repetitive cycle of work. Even during fasting, when meals are simple and meatless, the act of gathering together gives a sense of purpose and unity. You hear a funny story from the baker about a villager who once tried to skip fasting by pretending that a roast duck was just a very big fish. The priest didn't buy it, of course, and the man ended up paying a fine of eggs and bread. The villagers still laugh about it years later. Proof that even in the strictest moments, humor finds its way in. It's one of the few things that lightens the heavy cloak of religious obligation. In the evenings, as the sun dips low and shadows stretch across the fields, you see the priest walking through the village. He's not just here to give sermons. He mediates disputes, offers advice, and checks on the sick. Sometimes, he even tells stories himself, blending scripture with local legends to keep his listeners' attention. You watch as he sits by a fire, explaining the meaning of a parable, while also warning about the restless spirits said to haunt the old woods. It's part faith, part folklore, and all deeply rooted in the daily life of the villagers. There's a kind of peace in this mix of belief and superstition. You might not understand all the rituals, but you can feel the sense of connection they create. When the bells ring at dusk, calling everyone to evening prayers, the sound settles over the village like a soft blanket. For a moment, even the animals seem to pause. You find yourself standing still, listening to the fading chimes, and you realize that here, faith isn't something you do once a week. It's the water you swim in, the air you breathe. By the time night falls, the village is quiet. Candles flicker in cottage windows, and the smell of wood smoke and incense lingers in the cool air. You close your eyes, and the day's blend of prayer, superstition, and laughter feels like a strange but comforting lullaby. Here, belief is not separate from life. It is life, tangled up with every breath, every meal, every whispered hope for tomorrow. The clang of the blacksmith's hammer wakes you before the sun fully climbs over the hills, its rhythm like a heartbeat pulsing through the village. You follow the sound, drawn to the workshop, where sparks leap into the cool air like fireflies. The forge is alive, glowing coals, bellows wheezing, and the constant ringing strike of metal meeting metal. You step closer, the heat wrapping around your face like a wave. The blacksmith stands there, his arms dark with soot and sweat, shaping iron as if it were clay, transforming raw ore into tools that will keep the village fed and safe. Without him, no plow would slice the fields, no horseshoe would hold, no hinges would swing on cottage doors. His work is not just skill, it's survival. Historians still argue whether blacksmiths were considered artisans or something closer to sorcerers. But standing here, you can understand why some people whispered about magic. Watching him coax glowing metal into a curved blade feels like witnessing alchemy. Each strike is a promise of harvests, of repair, of continuity. As he lifts the piece into a bucket of water, steam bursts upward with a hiss, smelling faintly of iron and smoke. The sound alone feels like a secret incantation. A quirky detail? Some villagers toss small herbs, like rosemary or sage, into the forge while the blacksmith works, believing the smoke will bless the tools with luck and strength. No one laughs at this. Superstition and craftsmanship blend seamlessly here. Next, you wander to the carpenter's workshop. It's quieter, but no less impressive. Shavings curl from freshly planed wood, the scent of oak and pine hanging in the air. The carpenter is working on the frame of a new cart, his tools sharp, his movements patient. Each beam he shapes, each joint he carves, will hold together under the weight of grain sacks and firewood. You can see the focus in his eyes as he runs his fingers over the grain, checking for flaws. Wood, unlike metal, requires a gentler hand. One wrong cut, and the entire piece must be started again. Here, in this small corner of the village, you realize that every home, every barn, every cartwheel is a testament to his quiet skill. Not far from the carpenter, the cooper works on barrels. You see him bending strips of wood, soaking them in water and heating them until they curve just right. His barrels store ale, grain, and even salted meat for the cold months ahead. There's a strange beauty in watching these tasks, each one rooted in knowledge passed down through generations. Historians still debate how much innovation truly happened in small villages. But when you see a cooper fit a lid perfectly, or a carpenter shape a door hinge without a single nail, you realize that tradition itself is a form of innovation, a slow, deliberate mastery refined over centuries. As the day warms, you hear the faint creak of the mill turning. You follow the sound and find the miller, his face dusted white like a ghost of flour. The air inside the mill is thick with powder, making every breath taste faintly of grain. The massive stones grind endlessly, fed by sacks of wheat and barley. The miller checks the flour with experienced hands, rubbing it between his fingers to judge its texture. Some villagers mistrust him, joking that he's too good at making flour vanish into his pockets. But they also know they can't survive without his work. He is as essential as the blacksmith, the carpenter, or the baker. Without flour, there is no bread, and without bread, there is no life. A quirky moment makes you smile. A little girl runs into the mill carrying a handful of wildflowers, placing them on the windowsill as an offering to keep the flower spirits happy. The miller laughs, but leaves the flowers there, saying, "We can use all the luck we can get." It's in these small, simple acts that the personality of the village shines brightest. The baker's bakehouse is alive with heat and laughter. You step inside and are instantly enveloped by warmth and the rich smell of dough rising. Rows of loaves sit on wooden boards, some plain, others sprinkled with coarse salt or brushed with egg for a bit of shine. The baker moves quickly, sliding loaves in and out of the oven, his face glowing from the heat. "Bread is like people," he jokes. "Give it time and warmth and it will rise." The other villagers laugh, and for a moment, the hard edges of their daily labor soften. Historians still argue about whether medieval craftsmanship was undervalued compared to farming. But seeing these artisans at work, you know they are just as vital. Farming might feed the village, but tools, carts, barrels, and bread make survival possible. Each craft builds on the other, creating a web of interdependence that keeps everyone alive through lean times. As the sun begins to set, you see the blacksmith wipe his brow, the carpenter store his tools, and the baker hand out warm loaves to waiting villagers. The forge cools, the mill wheel slows, and the last barrel of the day is sealed tight. It's not just the end of a workday. It's the conclusion of a symphony where each note played by these craftsmen harmonizes into something larger than themselves. You watch as neighbors trade loaves, offer thanks for repaired tools, or swap a mug of ale for a handful of fresh nails. There's a satisfaction here, a sense that every task, no matter how small, matters. As night drapes over the village, the glow from the forge and bakehouse fades, replaced by the soft flicker of candlelight in cottage windows. You hear laughter drifting from the green, where the day's work is already turning into shared stories. The tools are set aside, but the sense of community built through these crafts lingers like the scent of fresh bread and smoke. You realize that while the fields may provide sustenance, it's the blacksmith, carpenter, cooper, and baker who give the village its backbone, and maybe even its soul. The first frost clings to the edges of the fields as you wake, and the village feels different, slower, heavier, as if every breath is wrapped in the cold air. The seasons have shifted into late autumn, and all around you, preparations for winter are underway. Winter isn't just a season here, it's a looming presence, a test of how well the community has planned, stored, and endured. You can feel the urgency in every movement. Firewood being stacked, grain being stored, tools being repaired by the forge before the ground freezes solid. You watch as families gather in the fields for the final harvest. It's a flurry of motion. Men swinging scythes, women bundling the last sheaves of grain, children collecting stray stalks like little scavengers. The air is alive with the sounds of labor, thudding, scraping. The rhythmic hiss of breath from people who know this work means the difference between comfort and hunger. There's no room for laziness now. Every single ear of wheat, every last turnip counts. A few laughs ripple through the workers when someone stumbles in the mud, but even the humor is laced with exhaustion. Inside the cottages, preparations take another form. Herbs are hung to dry above the hearth, meats are salted or smoked, and barrels of ale are sealed tightly for the long months ahead. The smell of wood smoke mixes with the tang of cured meat and the sweetness of stored apples. You step into a cottage and find a mother teaching her daughter how to mend a wool cloak, her fingers moving nimbly with the needle. "This will have to last through the snows," she says, her tone both firm and tender. Here, every scrap of cloth, every worn boot is patched and repatched, nothing wasted. Historians still argue about whether medieval villages were truly self-sufficient or relied heavily on trade. Watching these scenes, you realize the truth lies somewhere in between. The villagers work tirelessly to provide for themselves, but there's always someone walking to the next town for extra salt, honey, or even a few nails from a traveling peddler. Winter survival is a communal affair. No household can afford to go it alone. You wander to the green and find a group of men chopping wood, their axes rising and falling in a steady rhythm. The sound of splintering logs echoes across the village, accompanied by the sharp scent of fresh-cut pine. A boy, barely 10, struggles with a small bundle of kindling, his face red from the effort. One of the men ruffles his hair and says, "You'll be splitting these logs yourself next year." The boy grins, proud despite the strain. It's moments like this that show how the rhythm of work isn't just about survival. It's about teaching the next generation what it means to live in harmony with the seasons. A quirky tradition comes to mind. Villagers here believe that the first fire lit on the day of the winter solstice should be kindled with wood from an unburned log. Saved from the previous year, they say it brings good fortune and keeps evil spirits from creeping through the chimney. Whether it works or not, no one dares break the tradition. You see an older woman carefully setting aside a particularly thick log for that very purpose, muttering a blessing under her breath. As the days grow shorter, the mood shifts. The green, once bustling with trade and gossip, grows quieter. People spend more time indoors, gathered around the hearth, mending tools or telling stories. You step into one home and find 3 generations seated together: grandparents, parents, children, passing the evening with tales of saints, brave knights, and mischievous spirits that haunt the woods. The fire crackles, casting shadows on the walls, and you feel the intimacy of this world. Life is harsh, but it is also deeply connected. each story weaving the villagers tighter together. Historians still debate how much leisure time medieval peasants had, but watching them, you see that their leisure is practical. Storytelling isn't just entertainment. It's a way to pass down history, lessons, and warnings. A grandmother tells her grandchildren about the harsh winter of her youth, when snow buried the fields and food ran dangerously low. "We survived," she says, "because we helped one another." Her voice is steady, but her eyes glisten with memory. As the first true frost sets in, you notice changes in the air. Smoke hangs thicker, the earth smells sharper, and the nights are eerily silent. The village begins to retreat into itself, preparing for the isolation that winter brings. Even the animals seem to sense the shift. Cows are kept closer to the barn, hens no longer wander freely, and the village cats curl themselves tighter near the warmth of hearth fires. A few villagers believe that animals can see spirits during winter nights, and one man swears his dog once barked at a shadow that wasn't there. When the first snow finally falls, it's both beautiful and foreboding. The white blanket smooths over every track, every furrow in the fields, making the village look almost peaceful. Children laugh as they run outside, trying to catch snowflakes on their tongues, while adults watch with quiet concern. Snow means cold, and cold means hardship unless the woodpile is tall enough and the food stores are deep enough. You can sense the unspoken calculations in everyone's eyes. As evening falls, you sit by a fire in one of the cottages, a mug of warm ale in your hands. Outside, the wind whistles through the trees, but inside, the warmth is almost overwhelming. Someone starts humming a song, an old tune about the turning of the seasons, and soon others join in. The melody is soft, a little melancholy, but it fills the room like a shared heartbeat. In this moment, you understand something vital. Survival here isn't just about food or fire. It's about connection, about holding each other close through the long, dark nights. By the time the fire burns low, you feel the weight of winter settling around you like a heavy cloak. But you also feel something else, a quiet determination, the same one etched into every villager's face. The season ahead will be harsh, but together, they will endure. And as you sip the last of your ale, you realize that in this world, endurance is more than survival. It's a kind of faith. You wake to the crisp bite of winter air, sneaking through the cracks of a wooden shutter, and for a moment, the world feels silent and frozen. Outside, the ground is white with snow, and the fields that once buzzed with life are now wrapped in icy stillness. Winter has fully arrived, and it brings with it a challenge that tests the endurance of every villager. There's no planting, no harvesting, no bustling market, only the daily grind of surviving the cold months with whatever has been carefully stored and prepared. You walk past the cottages, and you see smoke curling from chimneys, carrying the scent of wood fires and slow-cooked stews. Most homes are dark and quiet, their doors shut tightly to keep out the chill. Life has moved indoors now. Families gather around their hearths, their days divided between essential chores and long hours of mending, weaving, or carving simple wooden tools. Children sit cross-legged on the floor, helping their parents twist rope or card wool, learning by doing because winter is not a holiday. It's another classroom of necessity. Meals are simpler but oddly comforting. You see a pot of pottage bubbling in nearly every home, a mix of root vegetables, dried beans, and scraps of meat or fat if luck allows. The bread is harder now, baked days earlier and softened by dipping it into the stew. A cup of ale or a watered-down cider accompanies every meal, not for luxury, but because water drawn from the well tastes sharp and stale in the cold. Historians still argue whether winter diets led to malnutrition among peasants. But looking at the modest portions on these wooden tables, it's clear that every bite is rationed with care. You wander to the green, now silent under its blanket of snow. The space that once rang with laughter, gossip, and the calls of traders is transformed into a quiet, white field where even footsteps seem hesitant. The stocks and benches sit deserted, their wood frosted over, like artifacts from another time. Yet, there's a strange beauty here too. The way the snow sparkles under the pale sunlight, the way the distant hills look soft and untouched, as though the world is holding its breath. Villagers stay busy even in the quiet. Men repair tools by the firelight, their hands rough but steady as they sharpen blades or fix cartwheels. Women spin yarn, weaving new cloaks or patching old ones that have seen too many winters. Children fetch small tasks, hauling wood, feeding the animals in the barn, or sweeping snow from the cottage entrances. It's not glamorous, but it keeps the body moving, keeps the mind from sinking into the heavy stillness of the season. A quirky tradition surfaces in the evenings, storytelling by the hearth. You step into one cottage, and the firelight throws dancing shadows on the walls as the family gathers close. An elderly man, his voice crackling like the logs, tells a tale about a brave knight who fought a dragon. Or maybe it's a wolf or a band of thieves. The details shift with every retelling, but the warmth of the story fills the room, blending with the scent of wood smoke and the occasional creak of the wind outside. Historians still debate how much of medieval history was passed down through oral tales. But sitting here, you can see that storytelling is more than memory. It's survival of the spirit. Outside, the animals are tucked into barns or sheds. You walk past and hear the gentle snuffling of pigs, the low rumble of cows, and the soft clucking of chickens. Their breath rises like steam in the dim lamplight. Caring for them is critical. Without livestock, the village has no milk, no eggs, no future meat. You watch a young boy spread hay for the animals, his cheeks pink from the cold. He pauses to pat a goat on the head, and the small act of affection makes the harshness of winter feel less lonely. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers saw winter as a season of rest or hardship, but you can see it's both. There's a strange rhythm to these days, slower, quieter, but still filled with purpose. Tasks like repairing clothing or preparing new tools feel almost ceremonial, as if each completed chore is a defiant statement against the cold. Festivals break the monotony. You hear rumors of a Yule feast coming soon, when villagers will gather in the manor hall or around a massive fire on the green to share whatever treats they can spare. Roast goose, honeyed cakes, maybe even a rare jug of spiced wine. For a night, laughter will echo across the snow. Songs will rise into the cold air, and the hardships of winter will feel distant, if only briefly. It's not just about celebration. It's about reminding everyone that life continues, even in the darkest months. As the evening deepens, you find yourself drawn to a cottage where the fire is burning bright. The family welcomes you in, offering a slice of dense bread and a bowl of steaming broth. The warmth hits you like a wave, thawing your fingers and softening the chill that settled in your bones. Around the fire, they talk about the coming spring, how they'll plant the first seeds, how the fields will turn green again. It's a reminder that winter is not forever, that even in the coldest night, the promise of renewal is just beyond the horizon. When you step back outside, the stars are sharp and clear, scattered across the sky like silver coins. The snow crunches under your boots as you make your way through the quiet streets. There's a sense of stillness, but also of resilience, as though the entire village is holding steady against the cold, waiting patiently for the earth to wake again. The days feel longer now, though the sun rises late and sets early, casting the village in shades of gray and gold. You wake to the sound of distant bells and the faint creak of cartwheels on frozen ground. Today is market day, and even in winter, the green transforms into a lively hub where villagers exchange goods, barter news, and catch up on the latest gossip. Wrapped in layers of wool and patched cloaks, people trudge from their cottages, baskets slung over their arms, their breath misting like smoke in the cold air. You step onto the green and see the scene unfold, a mosaic of color and motion against the white snow. A woman sells baskets woven from reeds collected last autumn, her hands moving quickly as she repairs a handle for a customer. Nearby, a man offers salted fish laid out on rough wooden boards. The sharp scent cutting through the crisp air. Children hover around the bread stall, eyes wide as they stare at the honey cakes the baker has saved for special occasions. It's not just a market. It's the social heartbeat of the village, where everyone gathers not just to trade, but to see and be seen. Bartering is an art form here. You watch as a farmer offers a sack of turnips in exchange for a pair of new iron nails from the blacksmith. Another villager trades a bundle of firewood for a jar of honey, carefully guarded through the cold months. Coins are rare, used sparingly, and only when barter fails. Historians still argue whether this economy was efficient or limiting, but standing here, you can see its strength. It builds trust, forces negotiation, and keeps everyone invested in each other's survival. A quirky scene catches your eye. An old man with a cart full of geese is loudly arguing with a woman over the proper price for one bird. She claims the goose is too thin. He insists it's as plump as the Reeves' pride. The crowd laughs, and eventually, they settle the matter with an exchange of apples, 2 loaves of bread, and a promise that the woman's son will help mend the old man's fence come spring. Here, deals are sealed not with contracts, but with handshakes and goodwill. The green also serves as the village news center. As you wander through the crowd, you catch snatches of conversation. Talk of a neighboring village suffering from illness, rumors about a traveling peddler selling foreign spices, whispers of a wolf spotted near the woods. Information flows here as freely as trade, and sometimes it's more valuable than the goods themselves. A woman leans close to you and warns, "Don't buy salt from that man. He waters it down." Whether it's true or not, you find yourself nodding and smiling, caught up in the warmth of communal chatter. Historians still debate how connected medieval villages were to the wider world, but watching this market, you can see threads stretching far beyond the hedgerows. A traveling merchant stands at one end, his cart filled with trinkets and fabrics dyed in colors brighter than anything local. He tells tales of towns and cities where the streets are paved with stone and markets run every day. Whether he exaggerates or not, his stories leave the villagers wide-eyed, their imaginations sparked by the thought of a world bigger than their own. The green is more than commerce. It's a stage for life. A fiddler plays a lively tune near the center, his bow dancing across the strings as children spin and twirl, their laughter ringing like bells. A group of young men challenge each other to a game of kicking the bladder, a rough version of ball play that ends with someone slipping on the icy ground and landing with a laugh. For a brief moment, the hardships of winter fade, replaced by music, laughter, and the smell of roasting chestnuts from a nearby fire. As the day wears on, disputes occasionally break out. You see the reeve step in when two men argue over the weight of a sack of grain. With calm authority, he settles the matter, reminding everyone that fairness keeps the market alive. A few jokes fly, tensions ease, and the trading resumes. It's remarkable how quickly tempers cool when community is at stake. No one can afford to hold grudges here, not when survival depends on cooperation. By the time the sun begins to set, the green is a patchwork of trampled snow and muddy footprints. Stalls are packed away, carts loaded, and villagers head home with their trades, baskets of flour, bundles of firewood, small parcels of dried herbs. The fiddler plays one last song, slower and softer now, as if to gently close the curtain on the day's performance. You watch as the merchant tips his hat, promising to return when the roads thaw in spring. Walking back through the village, the sounds of the market still echo in your mind. The laughter, the haggling, the music. It strikes you that the market is more than just survival. It's the village's heartbeat, pumping life, color, and connection into the long winter days. Even in the coldest months, this gathering reminds everyone that they are part of something larger than their own cottage walls, a web of trade, trust, and shared stories. As you step into the warmth of a nearby cottage, bread tucked under your arm, you realize that today's trades will feed more than just bodies. They've fed the spirit of the village, strengthened the bonds that will carry everyone through the dark weeks ahead. The days grow colder, but the village refuses to fall silent. You wake to the sound of hammering and laughter, and when you step outside, you see why. Today is not just another day of work. A festival is brewing. The green, blanketed by snow, is being transformed into a place of color, light, and warmth. Villagers bustle about, carrying armfuls of firewood, decorating poles with ribbons, and setting up makeshift tables for the coming feast. In the distance, you can already smell spiced ale simmering and hear the faint notes of a fiddle warming up for the night's music. Festivals are the soul of this community, as vital as bread and fire. They are the moments when time seems to pause, when the relentless cycle of toil and hardship gives way to joy. You watch as a group of women spread out cloths to display pies, roasted nuts, and honey cakes. Their chatter is lively, punctuated by bursts of laughter, and you can see the pride in their faces. For once, everyone dresses in their best clothes, even if best simply means the tunic without patches, or a cloak that smells faintly of lavender instead of smoke. Historians still argue whether medieval festivals were purely religious or largely social. But here, you can see they are both. The day begins with a service at the church where the priest blesses the gathering and offers prayers for good weather, strong harvests, and health. Then, with the ringing of bells, the villagers spill onto the green and the celebration begins. There's something almost magical in the air, as if the village itself exhales all its worries for a few precious hours. A quirky detail catches your attention. The maypole, a tall wooden pole decorated with ribbons and greenery, stands proudly at the center of the green. Even in winter, its presence is symbolic, a reminder of fertility, renewal, and the promise of spring. You watch as young men and women gather around it, weaving colorful ribbons in intricate patterns as they dance. Their cheeks are flushed from the cold and the excitement, and the sound of their laughter mingles with the steady rhythm of the fiddle. Food plays a starring role in these celebrations. You see the baker handing out fresh loaves, still warm from the oven, their crusts golden and inviting. Nearby, a man tends to a spit with a roasted goose turning slowly, its skin crackling and dripping fat into the flames. The smell alone is enough to make your stomach rumble. Children dart between tables, sneaking bits of honey cake when they think no one is looking, their faces sticky and happy. The air is thick with scents, spices, smoke, sweet baked goods, and the earthy aroma of roasted root vegetables. Then come the games. A group of boys engage in a tug of war, their boots slipping on the icy ground as the crowd cheers them on. A mock joust begins, where two men on hobby horses, sticks with carved wooden heads, charge at each other while the villagers howl with laughter. Even the reeve, usually so serious, can't help but grin as he judges the contest for who looked most knightly, which somehow goes to a man whose wooden horse lost its head halfway through. Historians still debate how much leisure time medieval peasants had. But standing here, you can see that these festivals are more than leisure. They are a form of survival. They give people a reason to laugh, to dance, to feel alive after months of mud, labor, and cold. They remind the villagers that life is not only about work and hardship, but also about joy and connection. As evening falls, the green is illuminated by a large bonfire. Sparks shoot into the night sky, and the entire village gathers around its warmth. The fiddler strikes up a lively tune, and soon everyone is dancing, the patterns of their steps forming a kind of living tapestry. Couples twirl, children clap, and even the elders seated on wooden benches tap their feet in time with the music. The fire crackles, its glow reflected in smiling faces, and you feel the weight of centuries in this moment. It's the same joy that countless generations before have felt, passed down like a tradition of fire and song. A funny moment unfolds when a man tries to juggle apples and drops one into the snow. A chorus of good-natured teasing erupts, and someone throws him a cup of ale as consolation. The atmosphere is infectious. You can't help but smile, warmed by both the fire and the laughter around you. As the music softens, the priest steps forward, raising his voice above the hum of conversation to offer a blessing for the coming weeks. Everyone bows their heads, the firelight casting shadows that dance across the snow. Then, in a moment of shared silence, you realize what makes these festivals so powerful. They're not just celebrations of the present, but promises of the future. They tell everyone here that no matter how harsh the winter or how uncertain the harvest, life will keep going, and joy will always find a way to return. The night winds down with a final round of songs. old ballads that speak of heroes, lost loves, and battles fought long ago. The villagers sing together, their voices weaving through the cold night air like threads of memory and hope. You stand there, feeling the warmth of the fire on your face, the vibrations of music in your chest, and you know that this festival, like all the others before it, will linger in the villagers' hearts long after the fire burns low. The bonfire embers are still glowing faintly on the green when the reality of life in a medieval village returns the next morning. Festivals are brief, fleeting moments of joy, but the rhythm of work never stops. You wake to the sound of footsteps outside, men heading to the fields, women gathering water from the well, children sweeping snow away from barn doors. The celebration is over, and the village, like a well-trained army, resumes its relentless march toward survival. Your steps take you toward the open fields beyond the cottages, and here the structure of village life reveals itself in a patchwork of narrow strips, each one belonging to a different family. This open field system is both clever and frustrating. Instead of each farmer having one large piece of land, the plots are scattered like puzzle pieces, forcing cooperation and preventing any one family from monopolizing the richest soil. Historians still argue whether this arrangement fostered community spirit or simmering resentment. But standing here, you can see both sides. The peasants work shoulder to shoulder, sharing oxen and tools. Yet, you catch them giving side-eye when someone's plowing a little too close to the neighbor's strip. The work is relentless. Even in winter, when the ground is too hard to plow, there are still tasks: mending fences, repairing carts, and planning for spring. You see a man greasing the wooden wheels of his cart with animal fat, muttering about how one wrong move on frozen roads could splinter the wood. Nearby, women hunch over baskets, weaving ropes from hemp fibers, their fingers red and chapped from the cold. Children, too, are drafted into this endless cycle. A boy is chasing birds from a grain store, while his sister carries a bucket of water nearly as big as she is, her breath puffing white in the frosty air. A quirky moment catches your attention. One farmer has carved a small charm out of wood, a figure of a plowman with a cheerful grin, and tied it to his ox's yoke for good luck in the fields. He swears it helps keep the ox from getting stubborn. Whether it's true or just a way to feel in control of unpredictable animals, you can't help but smile at the sight of this tiny guardian bobbing with each step. As you walk, you notice the quiet hum of barter and cooperation. Tools are shared between families, one man lending his iron-tipped hoe in exchange for help stacking firewood later. Food, too, is exchanged. A pot of beans for a wedge of cheese, a bundle of hay for a jar of honey. Historians still debate whether this barter system left villagers vulnerable to shortages, but here, the interdependence feels like a strength. Everyone knows who owes what, and debts are repaid not with coins, but with time, labor, and favors. The fields themselves are the lifeblood of this place, yet they are also unforgiving. The soil can turn to mud with just one day of rain, swallowing boots and wheels alike. You see the marks of past harvests etched into the ground, furrows frozen in place like scars. And yet, these fields also hold promise. Even now, in the dead of winter, people talk about the planting to come. Barley on the north field, wheat on the south, one man says, as if reciting a prayer. Planning for the future is as much a ritual as the prayers in church. You pass a group of women gathered near the well, talking in low voices as they haul water. They're discussing a family that's struggling. One of the men fell ill, and the others are pitching in to help with his tasks. There's a strong sense of collective responsibility here. If one household fails, the entire village feels it. You catch a woman saying, "We all drink from the same well. We must all fill it." It's both metaphor and truth, a reminder that survival is communal. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers lived in constant fear of hunger, but watching them now, you realize fear isn't the right word. It's vigilance. Every action, from repairing a fence to patching a tunic, is done with the future in mind. Winter might be quiet, but it's also a time for preparing, for strengthening the bonds that will see everyone through spring planting. As the day winds down, the fields take on a golden hue under the setting sun. You stand at the edge of the green, watching villagers return home. The blacksmith walks by, wiping soot from his hands, followed by the baker, carrying a fresh loaf for his family. The reeve stops to speak with a group of men about repairing the bridge near the river, a task that must be done before the thaw. There's no sense of off days here. Every step, every conversation is part of the ongoing effort to keep the village alive and thriving. A funny moment unfolds when a pig escapes from its pen and runs squealing across the green, with 3 children chasing after it. Their laughter echoes through the cold air as the pig zigzags wildly, slipping on patches of snow. It's a reminder that even in the grind of daily life, humor finds its place. Villagers pause from their work to watch, chuckling, before someone finally grabs the pig and returns it to its pen with a mock scolding. Smoke rises from chimneys, and the cottages glow faintly with firelight. You hear the murmur of conversations, the clink of wooden bowls, and the low hum of someone singing a simple tune. There's a strange beauty to it all, a balance between hardship and contentment, between the individual and the collective. You feel the pulse of this village not just in its work, but in its ability to endure together. By the time you return to your own spot by the fire, the sky is thick with stars, and the chill of the fields lingers in your clothes. You sip a bit of ale, letting the warmth spread through you, and you realize something profound. This life, though hard and unyielding, has its own kind of richness. It's a richness found not in coins or luxuries, but in shared bread, shared laughter, and shared resilience. The night is still when you awaken, the soft crackle of the hearth, the only sound. Outside, the snow is piled high against the door, and the village seems to be holding its breath beneath the weight of winter. This is the season of patience, of waiting for the earth to turn green again. But it is also a time of reflection. As you step outside, the moon casts a silvery light over the cottages, making the village look almost like a frozen painting. You can see the trails of smoke rising from chimneys, curling like lazy ribbons into the dark sky. Winter mornings are slow here. You hear a rooster crow faintly, muffled by snow, and soon the quiet breaks as villagers emerge from their cottages, wrapped in heavy cloaks. The day begins with feeding animals in the barns, pigs grunting for scraps, cows lowing for hay, chickens scratching at the frozen ground. You help carry a bucket of warm mash for the goats, feeling the steam rise against your cold hands. Even in this harsh weather, the animals must be tended first. They are lifelines for milk, eggs, and the occasional meat that keeps the village alive. Inside the cottages, the routines are equally steady. Bread dough is kneaded in the warmth of the kitchen, and pots of broth simmer over the fire. Children sit nearby, their cheeks flushed, spinning wool or learning to carve simple wooden toys. Historians still argue whether medieval winters offered more leisure time or simply different kinds of work. But watching these families, you realize there's no such thing as true rest. Winter simply shifts the labor from the fields to the hearth. Mending clothes, sharpening tools, weaving baskets, and preserving what's left of last autumn's harvest. A quirky custom reveals itself as you pass one house. A sprig of holly tied to the doorframe, its green leaves bright against the snow. The woman who lives there swears it wards off misfortune and invites good luck for the coming year. Another neighbor, more devout, mutters that holly is half pagan, half Christian, but she hangs it anyway, just to be safe. You smile at this mixture of belief and practicality. In a world this uncertain, no charm is too small to ignore. The day moves with a quiet rhythm. You see a group of men repairing a broken sled, their breath clouding the cold air as they joke about who will pull it down the hill first once it's fixed. A boy tries to sneak onto the sled, only to be chased off with laughter. Moments like these, small bursts of humor, are the lifelines that keep spirits high when the days are short and the nights are long. Even the reeve, usually so stern, cracks a smile when the boy hides behind him, claiming official protection. Historians still debate whether winter festivals were more about faith or simply about breaking the monotony of the cold. In this village, you see both. Tonight, the villagers are preparing for a midwinter feast. As the afternoon fades, the green comes alive once again, with people setting out wooden tables, hauling logs for a bonfire, and hanging garlands of evergreen branches. The scent of roasting meat and spiced ale fills the air. You watch as the baker pulls honey cakes from his oven, the golden crusts shining like treasure against the dark winter evening. The feast begins as the sun sets, painting the snow with hues of pink and gold. Villagers gather around the fire, cups of ale in hand, their faces glowing in the light. Songs begin, old ballads about saints, winter hunts, and the turning of the seasons. A fiddler's tune rises, and soon people are dancing, their boots stamping patterns in the snow. Children run in circles, laughing, their breath forming halos in the frosty air. Even the animals, safe in their barns, seem to sense the warmth of this celebration. A curious tradition unfolds. The burning log, saved from last winter, is placed on the fire with cheers and blessings. They believe it carries the spirit of survival from one year to the next, ensuring that no matter how harsh the cold, life will continue. The priest offers a prayer, but even he seems to enjoy the ale and laughter more than the solemnity of the moment. This is not just a feast. It's a declaration that the village endures, that even in the harshest season, joy can be found. As the night deepens, you stand near the fire, feeling its warmth seep into your bones. Sparks fly upward like tiny stars, and for a moment, the cold and the hardships fade. You look around at the smiling faces, the dancing figures, the shared food and laughter, and you realize this is the heartbeat of the village. Not the fields, not the manor, not even the church, but these moments of unity when every person here is simply human, equal, and alive. When the fire begins to die down, the villagers start to drift home, their voices softening, their laughter turning into murmured goodnights. You walk back through the snow, the moon high above, and you feel a deep sense of peace. The world is harsh, yes, but it is also filled with small wonders. Warm bread, shared stories, the glow of a fire in the darkness. By the time you return to your place near the hearth, the village is quiet again. The only sound, the faint creak of the wind against wooden beams. You close your eyes, and the memories of the feast linger. The music, the warmth, the unspoken promise that spring will come. It always does. The fire crackles softly beside you, its last embers glowing like sleepy stars as the village outside falls into silence. The snow glistens faintly under the moonlight, and every sound, the whisper of the wind, the soft creak of a wooden shutter, is hushed, softened, as if the entire world has decided to rest for the night. You pull your cloak tighter, feeling the gentle warmth of the hearth seep into your skin. And for the first time all day, there's no rush, no task waiting to be done. Just stillness. A calm so deep that even your thoughts seem to slow, stretching out like the long shadows cast by the firelight. You picture the village as it lies now, cottages nestled like sleeping animals under blankets of snow, their chimneys releasing thin streams of smoke into the star-studded sky. The animals in their barns are quiet, curled up in straw, their breath rising in soft clouds. Somewhere nearby, a dog shifts in its sleep, letting out a small sigh. It's a scene so serene that even the cold air feels gentle, like a cool hand resting against your cheek. Your mind drifts over the day's memories, the laughter at the feast, the stories told by the fire, the sight of children chasing each other through the snow, with joy so unrestrained it warmed even the iciest corners of your heart. These moments are like threads, weaving together a tapestry of life here. Harsh as it may be, it's also filled with these golden pockets of togetherness, the kind that remind you of what truly matters: connection, resilience, and the simple joy of existing alongside others. You take a slow breath, inhaling the smoky, woody scent of the fire and the faint sweetness of honey lingering from the feast. It's a grounding smell, one that pulls you deeper into the present. Your body begins to soften with it, each muscle unclenching one by one. Your shoulders feel lighter, your hands looser, your heartbeat calmer. The world outside, with all its cold and hardship, can wait until morning. Right now, all you have to do is let go. The villagers, too, are winding down. Behind the walls of each cottage, families are gathered close, murmuring soft goodnights. Candles flicker faintly before being snuffed out, leaving only the soft glow of hearths to keep the darkness at bay. In some homes, you imagine elders telling one last story of the day, about brave ancestors or mischievous spirits, while younger ones listen with heavy eyelids, their minds drifting somewhere between memory and dream. It's a comforting picture, a reminder that stories are not just for passing time, but for carrying warmth across generations. Historians still argue whether life in these times was more struggle than joy, but lying here, you can feel the truth in both. Yes, the days are hard. Yes, winter bites, hunger looms, and the work never really stops. But there is beauty here too, a beauty born of perseverance, of simple meals shared with laughter, of fires that never quite go out even on the darkest nights. Perhaps that's the real story of these villages. Not just survival, but a quiet triumph in finding peace amidst the struggle. The fire pops softly, breaking your thoughts like a gentle nudge, and you feel your eyelids grow heavy. The warmth of the hearth, the steady rhythm of the wind outside, and the soft hum of life settling all lull you into a state of complete ease. Your breath slows, each inhale and exhale becoming longer, smoother, like waves folding into a calm shore. As you lay down, you imagine the seasons turning, the snow melting, the first shoots of green breaking through the earth, the return of birdsong. It's a promise written into the land itself that winter is only ever a chapter, never the whole story. This thought wraps around you like a blanket, soft and reassuring, and you let yourself sink fully into it. Now, the world grows quiet, the fire dwindles to its final glow, and you let the last images of the day dissolve into dream. The village sleeps, the fields rest, and so do you. The hardships of today fade, replaced by the promise of tomorrow's light. And in this moment, all is well.